I bought these at the Dollar Tree. I am going to make a sweater vest. This was inspired by Jay's Dolls UK. These are short socks, so they will not make a full sweater like hers did. They're super cute. Sorry about the little bit of washout from the sun. It is super early in the morning. I normally tape at night or in the late afternoon. What you want to do is sew in the heel, and you try to match the color as best you can. And you also want to cut out the toes after the seam, because you want to fold that over and sew it so you have no pulling of threads. Now you want to stretch out the sock as you sew, because if you don't, the cotton thread might break while you're putting it on the doll, and you'll have to re-sew those seams. Now this is actually super easy even for a beginning sewing, and you want to sew the entire thing together, and then if it's something like this, and I'm thinking that eventually I might want to cut that part of the material out, then I will double back. And after you've gone through, you tie it off. Now you can do this work on a machine. My machine is broken, but if you do it on a machine, you still have to pull the material as you're sewing it. So for some people it is easier to do by hand. I wanted to get this done super quick because it's only a little bit of sewing, and seeing if I could do a challenge of like under 20 minutes. It took me about 40 to get this done. And that is about how long, so it's about as long as an oversized sweatshirt. You want to cut the armholes, just slits will do because it's just a vest instead of an actual sweater. And I would be using a corresponding color, the red and the gray, but the thread is super thick and will not go through any needles that I have, because it is a vintage thread that is higher quality than the thread that I normally work with. White thread will be fine, because if I eventually put on sleeves, they will probably be white to match Santa's beard. You just want to roll it over and then just do a nice quick stitch back and forth all around. You do want to stretch the material a little bit. It's not as important as when you're doing like the neck. The neck is very important, because to get the neck over the doll, you want to stretch that material as you sew. I'm not going to be sewing the neck on this one because I'm making a sweater vest. Be careful not to get knots in your line, in your thread, and to try to evenly space them. Now this will prevent it from rolling and tearing and just basically becoming a mess. You want this to not unravel. And sewing it in will prevent any unraveling. I'm going to do this on the arms as well. I am going to do white because if I do end up adding sleeves in later, like I said, they will be white, so white thread will not matter because I will have to sew them in with white anyway. This is probably the longest part because it can get caught on the other pieces of fabric. So this, you need to be careful. And like before, you just do back and forth. A nice little quick stitch. Try to pull the fabric as you go so that the cotton thread will not tear when you're putting it on the doll. Now, Generica, if I was having a really big problem, I can take off her head. But some dolls are not that easy. Some dolls that would break them. And many dolls that have true to size clothing that look like human clothing, they're designed to take the doll apart so you can put on the clothing. But those dolls are expensive, and I would rather make something for a regular doll than to go through the trouble and the expense of buying one of those smart dolls. You go through the same process on the other side for the other armhole, and then you sew the red part to the red part. So good side to good side on the good side's on the inside, the part you're sewing is on the outside, and you sew that together, and that will create the armhole. Now I made Generica myself, so I can just take off her head and put on a sweater, but if you have like a doll that you didn't make yourself that would break, you want to be really careful when removing the head. And I wouldn't remove it for just a sweater if I was doing that. I'm going to show you some pictures of her in the sweater vest, and then I'm going to show you how to put on sleeves. Now I'm going to show you how to make sleeves out of the little bit of scrap material that you have. This was a slimmer stock. It was 5'7" child size. And I've taken the white fluffy beard off both shirts and using those two scrap pieces to make the sleeves. Now these are short sleeves. You trim off the ends to make them rectangles and then sew them up and then put them inside the sweater as so, and then sew around, completely around, until you are back at the start. But what I like to do is go around again to make sure that they are sturdy and sewn really well. Now I did put one of these on incorrectly, so the seam is on the shoulder. You can't tell. When you look at it, you can't tell. You have to feel the seam to know that this one that I'm doing now is done incorrectly. But it's done the exact same way after sewing it all together, putting it together, sewing that little rectangle square shape, then you just place it inside the sweater. Rough side is on the outside, the good side is on the inside. And when you do this, then you can, when you're done, you'll turn the sweater right side out and it will be completely correct, except if you get the seam on the wrong side, which I did, but when you look at it, you're not going to be able to see that. You have to put your hand over it because it's fluffy material, so it's a little more forgiving. If this was t-shirt material, it would be glaringly obvious that I made a tiny little mistake, but you really won't be able to tell. And it really it took about 10 or 15 minutes to put the sleeves on. And I did notice a spot that I missed, so I re-sewed that because I had clipped it off but missed a tiny little spot. So I want to make sure that this little tiny sweater is built to last. Now I've turned it inside out. That one that's a little turned up is the one that was put on the wrong direction, but once you put it on the doll, you can't tell. It's actually adorable on her. Now I didn't need to take off her head. I only did before to show you how you could put on the sweater if you were having problems. So this time I didn't. Now this is actually pretty long on her, so it could be worn as a short dress with leggings or jeans or a long sweater. Now here is my little sweater that was inspired by J Dolls UK, and she can tell me please tell me how you think I did.